Hello again, this is Red Vitus. Welcome to my channel. As the title of this video describes, I'll be assembling a watch without a movement holder. So going back to my roots a little bit, this is how I started in this watch repair hobby. I don't think I had a movement holder until maybe my fourth or fifth watch. And I found this like a nice way of doing it. I didn't need to have a lot of tools when I started. So if you don't have a case cushion like I just showed, I'd probably use something like the cover of a tin, and maybe cushion it and cover it with a cloth just to make it softer, or turn it around to protect the pivots, and probably want to cover those edges maybe with some Rodico to protect the finish on the watch, but that could possibly be used. And now this case cushion, it's just a typical case cushion that you'd buy for a few bucks. I've covered it with paper, and that's just for lighting to make the work more visible. But I have the watch now taken apart. All the parts are cleaned, and it's ready to be assembled. Now this watch was restaffed. I'll say more about that later. But after I restaffed it, I did had to do some tests to make sure that the balance was spinning freely. I needed new watch oil, so I'll just show you how I add watch oil to my oiling cups. These watch oils are pretty expensive. I mean, each one of these bottles is 2 milliliters each. They run around $30. So we need a good way of using the oil without any excess and waste. So what I have is it's basically a large oiler. It's made out of a 1/16 inch aluminum rod. I flatten the end, and I basically just, with that, I can withdraw about a drop, actually a little bit less than a regular size drop, and in a controlled way put that on in the oiling cup. Now I'm washing it, getting ready for the other oil. That first oil was Mobius 9010. That's a light oil, which is used for balances and escape wheels and fourth wheels. This next oil is HP 1300. This is a heavier oil. It is used, at least I use it, for keyless works and for wheels in the gear train that see a higher torque. So it's a different color. It's also more viscous. But I apply it the same way, ensuring that I get every little bit off. We don't need much. This is enough for probably several dozen watches, but really the point is to keep your watch oil clean and change it regularly. So now I have the balance staff up in the top plate without the hairspring, and what I'm doing here is I'm just giving it gentle puffs of air and watching it spin. So I'm verifying that it spins freely in this vertical position. And at each position, I'm checking whether the balance is free and out of true. The balance has been aligned in a caliper. That's a tool that's used for truing a balance, but I still like to check it in the movement to make sure that it's centered in between the two plates. Another thing that this can reveal is heavy spots in the balance. And while this is not true poising, or at least I'm not doing any true poising, it does give me an idea of how that might affect the timing results. There are poising tools that are made for that purpose. I don't use those. That's a higher order skill. I'm just trying to learn the basics here. After I'm satisfied, I give it several quick puffs of air, and I watch the balance spinning freely. And I time how long it spins. And this is checked in all positions. So we have the vertical position, and the two horizontal positions. And I'm just verifying that there's no restriction that's stopping the balance. Once I'm satisfied that the balance is spinning well, only then will I attach the hairspring, and I'll usually try it again. So in this case, the balance spun for about 35 seconds, which is pretty good since I haven't oiled the jewels yet. So I was satisfied with that. Now to reinstall the roller plate and the hairspring, I'll take out my staking set. So I have the roller plate. This is a single roller, and the balance on a stump. And the stake I'm using is made for this operation. It has a groove cut out to protect the jewel, and a hole in the middle for the balance pivots. And right now I'm tapping it down with light taps, basically using the weight of the hammer. Don't want to hit the stake with any real force here, and it should go right into place. There's the roller plate all set. And now I flip it over, and I have the same stake that was on the top last time, but now it's on the bottom to protect that jewel. And I'm going to install the hairspring. So here I just have a hollow punch, and with hand pressure only, press it down into place. And there's the complete balance. So now it's a matter of taking it out and testing it in the watch. I'm beginning assembly now, and I'm going to install the winding pinion. So this winding pinion has a steel bearing, and that's so that the bearing doesn't wear out as it would if it were made of the soft brass plates of the watch. On full plate 18S watches, we usually do this first. It has to go on the pillar plate. And most of the brands have a fairly similar design. I have a video where I work on a Hamilton 18 size watch, and so if you watch that video, you can see how their design is similar, but also some slight differences with this Elgin. Moving on to the train. First, there's this odd-looking part, which is the pallet fork. Next, I have the escape wheel. Then the third wheel. Next will come the fourth wheel. So that has to fit between the two wheels. Just have to ease it into place. And last comes the center wheel. Now I showed this method of assembling 18S watches before on that Hamilton 950 video. This is the upside down method, where I'm putting the gears on the top plate and then placing the pillar plate on top of that. I find that that's an easier way of doing it. That's the way that I read was the best way, and never really had much of an issue with these 18S watches doing it that way. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because filming this this part of the watch assembly is pretty difficult. So now I'm placing the pillar plate. I line it with the center wheel first, and then the fourth wheel. Once I see those two pivots coming through, I then turn my attention to the third wheel and install that. And then only after that's done, I'll work on the escape wheel and the pallet fork. It's really important here to have nice, bright, polished pivots so you can see it visually when they come through the jewels. And this was kind of a unique situation. The pivots just went right into place. It doesn't always happen that easily. I'm checking that all the wheels are in the right position right now. So there's the third wheel that I'm looking at, checking for end shakes and freeness of movement. Now I'm turning my attention to the escape wheel and pallet fork. And they both look okay. Now this flashlight helps me just verify that those pivots are coming through. And so being confident that it's assembled, I flip the watch over. And here is where not having a movement holder gets a little bit difficult. I have nothing to rest the watch on because remember those pivots, the center wheel and the fourth wheel are sticking through on the other side. So I just have to put in the screws while I'm holding the watch. Those screws went in off camera. So while that's taking place, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this watch while turning through this Elgin brochure with my third hand. As I mentioned, this is an Elgin. It's grade 249. This watch was made somewhere around 1905. It's a 17 jewel watch. I managed to find an advertisement with all the Elgin watches from around this period. What I learned from that is, so this was in 1903. This watch cost $17.40, at least on the as advertised. And this was a time when the average salary was around $500 a year, so that was quite a bit of money. And I don't think that actually included the case. So it's actually, if you bought a watch, you would typically have a jeweler case the watch. And so this was an expensive purchase back then. I purchased this watch for about $15. I bought it in a lot of 2 watches that I paid $30 for. So this one didn't appreciate, but it's a nice watch, and I really want to get it working. This was actually the third watch that I ever worked on. So as you can tell, I'm working on this now because I wasn't really satisfied with the results. It did run, but it didn't run very well in all the positions. It had good amplitude in one position, and then in the other positions, the amplitude dropped off. So I've been periodically coming back to this watch, working on it, abandoning it, doing other things, and then coming back to it. So now that I'm satisfied that the pivots look good, I'm gonna check the motion of the pallet fork. So I put a little tension on the center wheel, and then the pallet fork should swing back and forth, and it looks fine. And that means I can tighten the screws. I'm placing a little oil here on the click, and then installing the ratchet wheel. Getting the barrel ready. I've already serviced and cleaned this barrel, and I purchased an alloy mainspring, so that's all installed and ready. With the barrel in, there's a cover. I have to put a little bit of oil on there first. So the end of the barrel, I use the HP 1300, that red colored oil that I showed earlier. And the barrel lid just goes into place. There's 2 little pins to align it along with the pivot and the 2 screws which secure it into place. So if you look at the top of this watch, you'll notice something. Around the balance, there's a shadow, a circle. And that was caused by the original balance wheel rubbing on the plate. Now, when I removed that balance staff, what I found was that that was not an Elgin balance or a balance or Elgin staff. So a watchmaker had probably either made one or modified one, and was a little bit off in the measurements, and the balance was rubbing against the plate, and that's why it wasn't running very well. I kind of won the lottery on this watch. It also needed hairspring work, so that was a learning experience. This is the lever, which is for setting the watch. It has one screw, which is a pivot point, so I place some oil on that. Don't really know if that's essential, but I usually do it because it's potentially a wear point, and it might make the action a little bit smoother. So I test that it springs back, and it looks good. Okay, so this is now the winding assembly, the keyless works. So there's the winding wheel. And this is the rocker plate, where the rest of the winding gears and setting gears attach. So it has some posts, and I'm placing oil there, and then installing each one of the wheels. So that is a intermediate setting wheel. That's another setting wheel. And then there's the intermediate winding wheel. I flip this rocker over, and that oil keeps the gears in place to some extent. Now there's a washer that comes next, just a cover, and then a left-handed screw. This screw is often left-handed. I think that's normal, but sometimes they're right-handed if there's two screws. So don't assume it's always going to be left-handed. There's a spring which I have to move into place, and so that looks good. The motion looks good. I'm just oiling where that lever touches the rocker plate. So now I have the keyless works all assembled. And next thing, I'll test the winding. So by turning it clockwise, that winds the watch, and counterclockwise ratchets. Flipping the movement over, and it's being rested on the dust ring. That was a bit of improvisation to protect the pivots on the pillar side. The next thing I'm going to do is try out the balance. Let's see if this watch will run. The balance cock has a couple of alignment pins that I'm checking. And I'll put in one screw. I won't tighten it all the way because I want to make sure that the watch is ticking and the pivots are in the right place. Takes off a little bit, then stops. So I'm not sure what's happening. So then it starts running. It has a very weak amplitude, and it's badly out of beat, but it is ticking, so I'm happy to see that. Without much winding of the watch, and plus I haven't oiled that top jewel or really any of the other jewels in the train, it's probably not too surprising that the amplitude's weak. But it is running in all positions, and that's a good sign. Once I oil the jewels and correct the beat error, I'll check the timing. So now we're at the moment of truth. With the watch on the timing machine, it's really showing excellent results. This watch is probably not going to win any timing competitions, but for its age and for the condition that it was in when I started working on it, couldn't be more happy. So we have an amplitude of about 260, a beat error of about 1, and it's keeping good time with the regulator not in the center of the index, but relatively in the middle third. So now the last thing to assemble is the motion works. I'm placing some oil on that center pivot and then attaching the cannon pinion. The cannon pinion is the also serves as the mount for the minutes hand. Next, I'll do the minute wheel. And I want to place a drop of oil right on that post. But I was a little bit sloppy. I got some excess oil on the plate, so I'm just going to clean that up and reapply with a smaller oiler. Satisfied with that, I can install the minute wheel. Now I'm placing oil on the cannon pinion. And next I'll add the hour wheel. And now it's ready for the dial. Trying to set the dial into place. There are 3 dial feet, but there was one screw that a dial foot screw that wasn't retracted enough, and I'll just loosen that. These dial feet screws are usually on the side of the watch. Now I tighten the 3 dial screws. Next, that dust ring goes back on. That should keep this watch clean. All right, now with the third hand, I'm opening the watch case. Now I can place the movement inside. Just got to line up the stem with the notch, or with the winding pinion. Easy does it. And tighten the case screws. Next, I install the hands. First, the hour hand. Press it in, and maintaining it parallel with the dial. So I checked the setting motion, and that looks fine. And I'll set it to 2 o'clock, and then place the minute hand. And the minute hand doesn't snap in at first, so press a little bit harder, and then eventually it gets on there. Now I just need to make it parallel to the plate. And lastly, the seconds hand. I'll set the time, and this watch is about finished. Just need to replace the case cover. So there's the bezel, and this is a completed watch. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. It's a real thrill to see this watch working again. This is Red Vitus, and thanks for visiting my channel.